Around 1200 BCE, 5 of the most powerful civilizations in the known world collapsed, within 50 years of each other. Not 1. Not 2. 5. Mycenae. The Hittites. Ugarit. Cyprus. The Levantine coast. In less than 50 years, every single one would be abandoned, burned, or reduced to a shadow of what it had been. No one knows exactly why. And that's what makes this one of history's most unsettling mysteries. To understand the collapse, you need to understand what existed before it. The Late Bronze Age was a world of interconnected palace economies. Grain moved from Egypt to the Hittites. Bronze moved from Cyprus to Greece. Tin came all the way from Afghanistan. This wasn't primitive trade. These were bureaucratic states with scribes, inventories, diplomatic correspondence, and international banking. Ugarit, a port city on the Syrian coast, exchanged letters with Egypt, Cyprus, and the Hittites as a matter of daily business. Mycenaean Greece built palace complexes at Mycenae, Tiryns, and Pylos, each one controlling a regional economy, each one connected to the others. The Hittites, centered in Anatolia, had fought Egypt to a standstill at Kadesh, and then signed the world's first recorded peace treaty. This world had been stable, complex, and prosperous for centuries. Then it wasn't. The trouble started somewhere around 1200 BCE. Exactly where is still debated. The palace at Pylos was burned. We know this because the scribes were still writing when the fire started. Their last tablets record emergency preparations. They never finished. At Ugarit, archaeologists found a letter baked into the ruins. The king of Ugarit was writing to the king of Cyprus, asking for grain, because his army was already deployed elsewhere. The reply never came. Ugarit was destroyed before it could. The Hittite capital Hattusa was abandoned. The palace district, the entire administrative core of an empire, was simply left empty. No bodies. No treasure hoards. Just empty rooms. Egyptian records show pharaohs fending off waves of attackers from the sea. Ramesses III, the last great pharaoh, repelled them at the Nile Delta. He carved scenes of the victory into the walls of his temple. But those carvings show something unusual. The attackers came with families, cattle, and ox carts. These weren't raiders. These were refugees. Egyptian records called them the Sea Peoples, a coalition of groups from the Aegean and Anatolia, most of whom archaeology hasn't fully identified. For a century, historians assumed the Sea Peoples caused the collapse. They showed up. Things fell apart. Correlation became causation. But that explanation has a problem. The Sea Peoples were homeless too. Whatever destroyed their world pushed them. Most likely they came from the Mycenaean world, which was already collapsing. Refugees causing collapses causing more refugees. A wave of instability ricocheting across the Mediterranean. The current scholarly consensus isn't one cause. It's a cluster. Evidence of severe drought appears in pollen and sediment cores across the eastern Mediterranean, spanning exactly the period of the collapse. When the grain failed, the palace economies failed with it. These systems depended on surplus. Remove the surplus, and the entire administrative structure collapses. Cyprus's copper trade dried up. Egypt's labor supply collapsed. The Mycenaean trade routes went silent. These palace economies had no slack. They were optimized for normal conditions. There was no buffer for a decade of failed harvests, let alone two. Add earthquakes, which did strike multiple sites, and internal revolts, and you have a compound failure most complex systems can't survive. Not one thing. Not one enemy. A convergence. The Dark Ages that followed lasted 400 years. In Mycenaean Greece, Linear B, a fully functional writing system, went completely silent. When writing reappeared, it was a different script entirely. Population dropped by an estimated 75% in some regions. Cities became villages. Villages became empty fields. Trade routes that had connected Egypt to Afghanistan simply stopped. The world got smaller. For centuries before anything approaching that level of complexity would re-emerge. The Bronze Age collapse wasn't just a historical event. It was a test case. Highly interconnected systems with no redundancy are efficient in good times. In bad times, they're brittle. The Bronze Age world was extraordinarily sophisticated. That sophistication is exactly what made it vulnerable. 5 civilizations. 50 years. No survivors with a written record of what happened.